What's good, y'all? It's your boy Zoetic, and we back with another episode of my collection.
Breaking records, I ain't talking about my collection. Yeah.
Alright, so y'all know how we do it about this time, man. I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and we're gonna pull out a CD. First thing I want to talk about here is this CD I got here. This is The Police. This is like a greatest hits little compilation right here that I bought back when CDs were popping, I guess. It's funny because this is actually the same version that my parents had a copy of this too back in the day. And you know, we would throw it on, we would listen to different stuff, and I really want to talk about this because this is way different from a lot of stuff that I usually talk about on the channel and on the podcast and stuff. I'm usually talking about rap and R&B, stuff like that, but this is cool, man, because this is really dope, like classic rock, you know, reggae influenced classic rock, and this is definitely a different type of music that I think one day I would like to inspire to make, you know, alternative sounding music, things that aren't necessarily rap or R&B. You know, it's just cool. I mean, obviously they have monster mega hits and Sting, you know, legendary group and stuff, but I just really wanted to talk about this to kind of show you guys a little bit of the range, a different type of variety of music that I listened to when I was a kid growing up, and that I still listen to, and that will at some point will affect the type of music that I make, man. So The Police, dope classic band, man. I just wanted to touch on The Police real quick, man. Every Breath You Take, the classics compilation right here. All right, next thing I want to talk about, I got a book right here. This is called To Funk and Die in L.A. This is by Nelson George, fictional book. And when I bought this book, I didn't realize that it was a fiction book because I'm not too heavily into fiction books, but I know that the story was based around, you know, funk music and the LA funk scene, specifically around the 70s and things like that. I thought it was more of like a, you know, a documentation of the LA funk scene in the 70s, but that's not really what this is. It's kind of like a crime drama mystery from Nelson George, and there's like a character in here that is, I guess it's supposed to be Sly Stone. I don't know, man. I gotta keep it all the way real with you, man. I don't love this book. Like I said, I bought it under the impression that it was something different. And Nelson George, obviously a esteemed music historian and music writer, man. The dude's been on, you know, just been documenting music history for a really long time, and he's well esteemed. But I don't know, man. When it comes to the fiction, I just don't think I was really feeling it too much. It's kind of generic and predictable, you know, and if I'm reading a fiction book, you know, I kind of want things to throw me for a spin, and that's not really what this did. So, you know, I don't usually talk about things that I don't enjoy, but I bought this under the impression that it was something else, and I did not enjoy it. So, To Funk and Die in L.A., Nelson George, that's also part of my collection. All right, now, of course, I actually want to dip into another book that I just recently read. I had a friend of mine who recently gave me this copy of, this is the Godfather original pressing from 1969. Really vintage stuff. I mean, you can see kind of the wear and tear on the outside of the pages. And it's funny because I had actually read this book when I was really young. I was probably way too young to comprehend exactly what was going on in the book. But because I was kind of a prolific reader when I was a young kid, and people around me used to try to challenge me to read, you know, more advanced type of books than what my age range was at the time. So I read The Godfather, I think I was like 8 or 9, 10, something like that. So all the stuff just went completely over my head. But reading it now, obviously classic, historic piece of not just literature, but just pop culture, and the story and the way the story is told, and of course the two characters that stand out the most, of course, Don Corleone and Michael Corleone, man. The way that they make their decisions, the way that they think, the way that they kind of conspire in this mafia world is just really, really incredible, man. And you know, it's obviously this thing was printed in 69, so reading it with 2021 eyes is kind of you know, there's some ideals and practices and just ways of thinking that are really old, and you know, you read them with 21 eyes and it's kind of cringy, you know. But I think overall, you're talking about one of the greatest stories of all time. I mean, it's The Godfather, hands down. And I just thought, I just wanted to kind of touch on the book because, you know, it's been so long since I read it, and now that I'm reading it as an adult and I can fully comprehend the things that are going on in the book, obviously classic and the type of story that any kind of storyteller should be aspiring to make. And coming off of the heels of the book, I wanted to revisit the movies, obviously the first two movies, obviously classic movies, man. Really special to me and my family because my grandma Stella, rest in peace, some of her favorite movies of all time. I remember there was always at least a couple of days out of the year when we would just sit down together, all of us as a family, and we would watch the first two Godfathers together. It was kind of like an event, you know, kind of something that we would do every year. And of course, seeing it as a child, and you get familiar with all the classic scenes and classic lines and things like that. But you know, as you watch it as an adult and really taking in all of these ideals and the way that they're moving in this world, and especially specifically Don Corleone, man, just the way that he plots and plans and strategizes. He kind of sets his enemies up to do what he wants them to do, and it's just such a brilliant way of storytelling, man. And the characters are just so larger than life, and you fall in love with the characters from the first scene of the movie. You know, the wedding scene is just so incredible, so iconic, and so classic that, man, it just sticks with you forever. And it really shows you why this stuff is still regarded as some of the best work, you know, movies, books, you know, just acting, things like that. These are some of the best things that have ever been done in pop culture history, man. So it's really cool to kind of revisit all this stuff and really look at it with a new age lens, with the way that new things are coming out. You really get an idea for how timeless this stuff really was, man. So The Godfather, obviously classic pop culture, iconic, just figures, man. All right, and to wrap it up, I got a couple records that I want to talk about here. And kind of coming off of the heels of The Police here, I got a record here. This is a compilation of Chicago's greatest hits. This is an original pressing, I believe, from 75. 75, yes. Original greatest hits of Chicago. And Chicago was really important to me because my dad specifically, he came up in that, you know, 70s classic rock, soft rock era. So he really loves all of the classic rock. You know, I grew up listening to all the classic rock radio stations and whatever CDs and music that he was playing around my house. And Chicago was definitely one of the huge bands from back then. They have a really dope instrumentals, you know, horn sections, and just their songwriting and productions are just so beautiful, man. They have such a variety of just hard rock stuff to really soft ballad stuff. And Chicago, man, just like I said with The Police, you know, this is kind of the type of music that I would like to aspire to make one day. You know, maybe I could write something for somebody that does that fits more into that mold. But man, when I'm talking about somebody like Chicago, it's just like, I don't really think you hear too many people from my generation connecting to what Chicago did, and they kind of changed things, and not really like rock and the way that people played, but they changed the way that the radio formats were looking for pop music, specifically in that classic rock era. You know, I think Chicago really made their mark on that, man. Iconic, classic band. It doesn't really get much better than that, man. Chicago, greatest hits, one of the greatest of all time. And next up, I got a little 12-inch single here that I copped a few years ago. This is the SOS Band, Just Be Good to Me. Obviously, Taboo Records, you know, Clarence Avant, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. This is just absolute classic stuff right here, man. I mean, SOS Band, another group whose music I was just raised on, and I don't know life without the SOS Band's music. My parents were just playing the SOS Band so heavy, so, I mean, it's just ingrained in me, man. And then as I moved on and got older and started checking out production credits and writing credits and stuff like that, I figured out that Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis did a lot of those SOS Band hits from the 80s, you know, after Prince and the Time. It's just incredible to see their progression from the beginning of that to even now, just this year, where they just put out their debut album of Jam and Lewis Volume 1, and they're working with all these incredible vocalists, and it's just crazy to see the longevity, man. I mean, this is 83 right here, and they just dropped their debut album. So you're talking 40 years in the game. These guys were killing it from the gate. It came out the gate firing with heat, with classic material like this. Just Be Good to Me. I mean, what more could be said about a single like this, man? Some of the greatest music of all time. That's kind of a theme of what this entire segment of my collection is here, man. I'm so inspired by things that are just great. I'm inspired by greatness. I strive for greatness. I want to be great. And you know, obviously I can't put myself in that conversation yet, but hopefully one day when it's all said and done, when the book is finally closed, maybe one day I would like to put my name alongside the people who inspired this, you know, the greatness, the iconic figures who really inspired me to be great. That's all I aspire to one day, is just to be considered in the conversation with their names, man. So SOS Band, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, everything that I've just discussed here today, man, just examples of greatness and things that I'm inspired by and aspire to be, man. So I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in, man, and just hearing me nerd out about the shit that I love, music and books and all this stuff, man. All this stuff is really important to me and inspires me. So I appreciate y'all, man, and tune in next time to see what we're checking out, man. Y'all have a good one. Peace and blessings. Laters.